Group running robocalls impersonating Trump's campaign has already raised more than $100,000. It even uses a recording of the president's voice. Calls like this one, said to number more than 200,000, have helped raise more than $100,000 in January alone, but that money isn't going to the Trump campaign, whose spokesperson told CNN they were not affiliated with the calls. Instead, a CNN file investigation into the group behind the calls, Support American Leaders PAC, reveals it is run by 32-year-old Matthew Tunstall, who has a history of managing shadowy groups that target people with politically charged calls in order to raise money, while doing very little if anything at all to put that money toward a political purpose. Tunstall made more. The operation effectively amounts to an income cycle of wash, rinse, repeat, paying for ads to raise money to pay for more ads to raise more money, and so on, with Tunstall taking home whatever money doesn't get used to pay for more ads. The enterprise determining who was behind the calls was difficult. The recorded calls, the calls use multiple scripts. Some publicly, those practices appear to be in violation of Federal Trade Commission, Federal Election Commission and Federal Communications Commission rules on impersonation and requiring ads disclose the name of the organization making the calls. In response to written questions from CNN, Tunstall claimed the calls followed required rules and said any calls beginning with this history of playing both sides. Tunstall has a history of managing PACs that targeted conservative and liberal ends of the political spectrum. During the 2016, nearly all of the money donated to both groups went to paying for radio ad and calls that solicited more donations, or to Tunstall and unspecified media consultants. According to CNN's file in 2017, that Liberty Action Group raised nearly $3 million through radio ads and robocalls during the 2016 election by asking for contributions to help elect Trump, with Tunstall himself being paid more than $300,000. Liberty Action Group on fundraising appeals in 2016, asking voters to sign a pledge they claimed was signed by Carson to support Trump. The group was sued by a San Francisco man who said they illegally placed robocalls to his cell phone, causing him to incur unwanted charges. Court records show. K-File also reported that in early 2017, several people received phone calls from Progressive Priorities PAC that played a recording of former President Barack Obama, followed by a request to donate to help. Unchanged practices. Despite past reporting, Tunstall doesn't seem to have changed his ways, but he claims his ads never intended to impersonate anyone and claims this time around he plans to spend the money to support candidates like President Trump. Recorded robocalls reviewed by CNN's KFILE, and calls and data obtained from Noma Robo, a company with a widely used application to stop robocalls on cell phones and landlines, show Support American Leaders PAC did not have any required disclosures on their calls. Calls from Support, CNN's K-File first discovered, which tracks robocalls through the 250,000 phone lines they own in order to block them on their application. In calls, an FEC spokesperson told K-File that they require that telephone solicitations by a candidate's campaign or a committee must. The FEC also fundraising that misrepresents The FCC requires any to identify the name of the committee behind the calls at the beginning of the message, and a callback number must be provided either during or after the message. Section 5 Act. Despite this, Tunstall claimed his calls featured the required disclosure and said he made more than 200,000 calls. Professor Richard Hassan, a University of California, Irvine professor of law and political science, says that Tunstall may be opening himself up to criminal penalties if his actions were intentional. Willful. Hassan pointed to a GOP donor who was indicted earlier this month for using his super PAC to funnel more than $1 million in contributions to himself. Tunstall and his PAC aren't easy to find. Because of the lack of disclosure in the robocalls, the pack could only be reached by being connected with an operator if you received a call and pressing a number when prompted. Nomorobo had operators in call centers repeatedly told K-File and 4 calls that the group making the call was the Trump campaign. When pressed, the transaction was charged as support. Tunstall is the and a phone number listed for the pack was previously not a working number. Following an inquiry, Raleigh told CNN's K-File the processor had suspended support American Leaders pack based on previous reports on Tunstall. Tunstall told CNN that call center operators were told to give the name of correct pack and that the error was the result of incorrect scripts. Tunstall declined to give CNN the name of his call centers when asked. For an organization without a website or any media attention, FEC records show support American Leaders pack. But the records don't. Tunstall could not say what support. Donor.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.